Normally I would jot down a few points for a video just so I have a rough structure of what I'm going to talk about. I have no structure, no plan at all for this. It's something that's obviously always on my mind, but has been on my mind a lot at the moment. So I thought I would just try and make a video talking through some of my experiences and what I've learned. If you followed our journey through IVF, you will know that our problem in the end was that of recurrent miscarriage. Every time I had a transfer, I was pregnant, we had positive pregnancy test, and I would go on to lose the pregnancy, usually quite early. The latest miscarriage we had in the end was 8.5 weeks, and I think the earliest one was probably 5.5 to 6 weeks. It was something I was just not prepared for. As most people are, you are ignorant until you've experienced it firsthand. You can obviously sympathise and empathise to some extent with people, but I really had a very limited understanding of what a miscarriage really entailed. My own mother had a miscarriage between myself and my sister, so I knew of that, and I knew that that was a very difficult time for her. I have known of some friends that have gone through it, but not that many. It might be more that people are unwilling to talk about it, or perhaps they simply haven't endured it. But I think it's something more historically anyway that people didn't really share. And I'm pleased to live in a time where we're certainly more forthcoming with our experiences if we so wish to be. Not everybody does, but I certainly think we still have a long way to go in terms of awareness of miscarriage, how we can support people going through miscarriage, particularly in terms of just the law and the guidelines and juggling work and life whilst you're going through this testing time. But all that aside, I just want to talk through very quickly what happened to us. So our first transfer, we kind of skipped into naively. Clinics had just opened after COVID. So we had a tough time in that technically our first cycle was cancelled. It was a couple of days before I was due to start injecting, and everywhere was shut. Everything went into lockdown. That, although obviously not as harrowing as it could have been, because there were other people who were already in treatment that had to stop, and I can't even begin to imagine the pain of that, we still found it difficult because that was our big shot, right? That was the date we'd worked up to. We were going to start our treatment. We naively thought, oh, it's going to work quickly. We're going to be pregnant. We're going to have a baby. And then suddenly our right to even try to have a baby was taken away from us. Anyone who couldn't conceive naturally and needed intervention had to wait. And we didn't know at the time whether we'd be waiting 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. And I think after the first couple of weeks rolled by and you realise actually this lockdown isn't going to be a short-term thing, I really started to feel quite low. I didn't know when we'd get our shot, and it was very, very tough time. In the end, we were waiting, I think it was about 3.5 months. So not too bad. In the end, it could have been a lot worse. So after 3.5 months, we were told clinics reopening and you can start your treatment. It was a roller coaster in that you can imagine the backlog of patients the clinics had, and I don't necessarily blame them. I think mistakes were made in our treatment, probably in a lot of treatment because of that backlog. In our first cycle, we had 12 eggs from me, which was actually a massive result because my egg count wasn't great for my age. I was 33.5 at the time, but I had quite a low egg reserve. So to get 12 mature eggs was absolutely amazing. The shock came when we got the call the next day to say that 3 of those 12 had fertilised, which is a very low fertilisation rate. Usually you're looking at around 3/4. So we were thinking it would be maybe a fertilisation rate of around 8, maybe 9 if we were lucky. So when they said 3, I thought, right, that was the first shock. And then by the time we got to transfer, they said, there's one good enough to transfer and we might have another one to freeze. It turned out they didn't have another one to freeze. It wasn't good enough. So it was just that whole cycle, which was a long protocol cycle. It's injecting, I think in the end I injected for 30 days. There was another cock up with that. I injected for a week longer than I should have because of the clinic's cock up, but that's another story. So to go through all that and the money, I think the cycle was about, at that point, 6,000 to get one embryo. We thought, wow, okay. But we were told it was a good embryo. I think it was a B grade embryo. So, maybe that was just what was meant to be and this was going to work and that would be the end of it. So we went through the 2-week wait and I think by the end of it, I thought, I don't feel right. I felt like I was having those kind of period symptoms and I thought, I'm going to start my period. This isn't right. We tested on official test day. I got positive. We were very confused. No one talked to us about a chemical pregnancy. No one explained to us what that meant. when I spoke to some friends about it, they said, look, positives are positive. Even on the test packet, it says even if it's a fainter positive, you're pregnant. So we spent a few days thinking like, well, I guess we're pregnant. We spoke to the clinic. They said they could book us in for a scan in a couple more weeks. So we were kind of up in the air. And then a few days after that, I bled. So that was that, which I think deep down I knew was going to happen. It was a massive blow to go through that and to know that we had nothing frozen. We'd have to start all over again. So we went into the next round, kind of renewed. I mean, we were told, look, you've had an early miscarriage, you've had a chemical pregnancy, but this is good. It means your body is receptive. It means that your body can implant embryos. It's a good sign. We were told that my eggs and our donor sperm were kind of a bit incompatible in that when you do IVF and you put the sperm and the eggs together in the little dish, I'm very much simplifying it here, they're meant to fertilise together. And what was happening was that the sperm, it was swimming, I don't know why I'm doing this, was swimming on top of my eggs. And it wasn't actually fertilising with my eggs. Well, it was, because 3 fertilised, but it was a low rate. So I was gutted to think, God, I had a lot of mature eggs and most of them just perished. I questioned why they didn't do emergency ICSI, which seems to be a thing in some parts of the world whereby they ring you up and say, look, fertilisation isn't happening. Do you want us to do, not emergency ICSI, sorry, rescue ICSI is the term I'm looking for, emergency ICSI. And they then try and inject the sperm into the egg to kind of rescue that fertilisation and make it happen. But they didn't do that with us. They just let everything perish. So again, I think that was COVID overload and the backlog. But that was a bit crap. But anyway, we were told, look, on your next round, you need to do ICSI, where instead of just leaving the sperm and the eggs to fertilise together, the embryologist will take the sperm with a special needle, I'm saying, again, please correct me, and they inject the sperm directly into the egg. So they basically prompt fertilisation, they make it happen. So we're hoping that that will resolve the issue. So we said, okay, that's fine. We went forward to do that. It was a change. We also used embryoscope and we used the glue, which apparently, I think that the rules around that have changed and it's not meant to be that great. But anyway, we did all these add-ons, money, ICSI's money, glue's money, embryoscope money. I think that round then with the ICSI and everything was about 8,500. So we're like, right, you know, we've already spent, I don't know, 4 grand or something on the donor sperm. We've already done 6.5 grand on this first cycle that went really badly. We've already had to wait because of COVID, and now we're going to do another 8.5 grand, but this is it. What can you do? So you go for it again. So I went in and the dates were really funny. I think my egg collection was the day before Halloween, I remember, and going in and everyone was dressed up in, or maybe it was Halloween. I don't know. Everyone was dressed up for Halloween, so maybe it actually was Halloween, and it was all a bit funny, but it was chilled. You know, the nurses were nice and the embryologists were really, really nice. So we went in and I thought, okay, I got 12 last time. If I can get 12 again or even 10, anything close to that, we're winning, right? I was really strict with everything I did from there on out. I mean, it's, you know, probably just luck a lot of the time, but I was very strict on what I was eating. It was absolutely no caffeine. I was taking special supplements. It was no fragrance. I wore makeup because I didn't want to scare the world. Other than that, I was using fragrance-free shampoo, fragrance-free non-alcoholic shower gel. I didn't wear nail varnish. Anything I could do, I was doing to try and make these eggs as good as they were. You know, it's minor things, but at the same time, your life becomes very much governed and surveyed by this paranoia and this worry and this anxiety. But the egg collection went well and we got 14 eggs and we just couldn't believe it. I remember one of the nurses coming in and saying, you've got 14. And she couldn't believe it either. So it was amazing. And I believe, if my memory is correct, I think of the 14, 13 were mature. So 1 egg wasn't good enough, but the 13 were good enough. That was kind of, I suppose, in a way, the easier part. The worst part was waiting for the phone call the next day. And I thought, if this fertilisation rate is low again after ICSI, like, I don't know what we're going to do. So she called and she said, I believe 8 have fertilised. We might be looking at 9, 1's a bit slow, but you're looking at 8 to 9 fertilised. And the relief was just, I can still feel it now just thinking about it. It makes me want to cry. I thought, oh my gosh, this is going a lot better. This change has helped. And then you have to wait a few more days and you get your transfer date, which means that there looks like there's going to be something to transfer. But we went in thinking, if it's just 1 again, it might be none. But if it's 1, this is going to be tough. And we went in and I think they said, 1's good. We're going to transfer. It's a B, I think it was. Another one's looking good. We put that in the freezer today. That's also a B. We're keeping our eye on a couple. We'll let you know tomorrow. So we were like, okay, you know, this is still better than last time. There's 1 already frozen and we've got 1 to transfer. This is still more than we had before. and let's see what happens. Transfer date was my birthday. I turned 34, so you romanticize. Actually, what I didn't say is our first transfer, the previous transfer that went wrong, that was on our anniversary date, so it's 1st of July, which is a special date for us. This transfer was on my birthday, so you have all these dates and you think, oh, it must mean something of all dates to happen, but is what it is, they're just dates. So I have transfer on my birthday, and I think we were in another lockdown at the time, but clinics were allowed to stay open. It was all very confusing. No, we were going into lockdown the next day, and people were saying, oh, you must be doing something amazing on your birthday before the world locks up again. And I didn't want to say what was happening, so I just had to really downplay it. I felt really good with that transfer. Actually, of all the transfers I've had, it was that second transfer that I thought, this has worked. This is it. It's a funny feeling to explain, but it just felt different. And the 2-week wait went pretty well. I didn't feel like I was going to start my period or anything like that. And actually, around just before our test date, I think it was the night before, I said, I feel sick. And I thought, wow, like, I'm pregnant. I now feel sick. This is all happening. Test date went better. It was a much stronger positive line. We were really excited. We did, I think, 3 or 4 tests, all looked really good. I carried on feeling sick over the next few days. It was all really exciting. And then, again, I can't quite remember, but I think what happened was I started doing some spotting again, and I thought, hang on a minute, this isn't right. And then the bleeding got heavier and heavier, and we knew. It lasted longer than the previous one. I think I was about 6.5 weeks. And I thought, I'm losing the pregnancy again. And this time I'd been put on a higher dose of progesterone. So with our first cycle, it was just the progesterone pessaries, which I think is standard. And for the second cycle, it was the pessaries. And I was given these Lubion progesterone injections, which may have helped maintain that pregnancy longer, who knows? But I went on to lose it. That was one of the toughest ones for me because it just felt right. I still feel that that embryo was normal and that I shouldn't have lost it. I don't know why. I don't know why that happened. That was shit. I remember Muriel, my partner, going out and putting up our Christmas decorations outside because she was just desperate to make me feel better because I just spent those few days and weeks in a complete state. Really, it was hard. And I couldn't see family, I couldn't see friends, we couldn't leave the house, we were in a lockdown. And I remember being on work calls, Zoom calls, and obviously everyone's kids were on the calls because everyone was locked up and people were laughing and joking and showing their kids. And I remember at one point turning my camera off, like I had to stay on the call, but I just turned my camera off and I was in so much pain because I was still bleeding out this pregnancy. And I stood up and I could feel everything just gushing out of me and my stomach was hurting and I just had tears rolling down my face. And that was really, really hard. And that Christmas was really, really hard. And you start to think, what the F is wrong with me? But on the positive side, which I missed out from that experience, was that they called me the day after my birthday, which was the day after my transfer date. And they said, there's 2 more we're going to put in the freezer. And there was something about it. I mean, the relief to think, okay, now I've got 3 frozen. But when they said we've got 2 more in the freezer, they're a lower grade. Something within me, which was weird because I was feeling at the time very positive about my second transfer. Everything seemed right. But something about that in my psyche, I thought, it's going to go to the end. I'm going to go to that final embryo. And it must have been a fleeting thought because generally I had a good feeling, but I thought that and I turned out to be right. So Christmas comes and Christmas goes. There's a whole load of drama in between that I can't be bothered to go into because they do blood tests and check your levels again. And my levels were all out and I had massive issues with prolactin. And then they said, you can't do treatment till you sort out your prolactin levels. Then we have to go to another private hospital, get more stuff sorted, get more things sorted, more money, more money, more money. So I'm told I can't do treatment till I sort it, but I do sort it. And if you want to know anything about prolactin, let me know and I'll have a conversation with you about it because it's a bloody nightmare. So we've done everything we can to go into transfer number 3, which goes ahead in January. Again, this time they changed my progesterone to a different kind of progesterone, which is intramuscular injections with needles like this long, bloody horrific. Weirdly turned out to be the least painful needle after all the fear, but really hard. Muriel had to inject me every night and it was really awful. I think it was night and day, can't remember, and the pessary. So I was like a walking, talking progesterone machine again. They said, right, we're going to do your first frozen cycle. I'd never done a frozen cycle before. And they did it, a natural frozen cycle, which again turned out to perhaps not be the best decision, but that's what they did. Went in for transfer, pretty straightforward. I don't remember there being any drama. And I thought, okay, third time lucky. I mean, everyone was saying at the time, third time lucky, third time lucky. 3 seems to be the average from the research done of success. And I thought maybe this is going to be it. It was another B grade. So I went in for the transfer to speed things up really quickly, had the 2-week wait, was a bit of a weird time, but felt okay. And then on our test weekend, we did test, I think it was a day early, we got positive. So we were like, okay, we're not being too excited here, but we got positive. And then a day or 2 after that, things got very bad in our house again. We were in another lockdown and we had, I won't go into too much detail, but we had an indoor bunny rabbit, which was our pet, who was nearly 10 years old, who was everything to us, really got us through our IVF. As anyone who knows going through it, I think a lot of people have dogs and cats. We had a bunny rabbit. He was just our saviour, really. He was everything. And he'd been unwell for some time and took a real deterioration during this time, which resulted in us having to, after a lot of fighting, make the difficult decision to put him to sleep. And I miscarried. I started miscarrying the day before that. So to be honest, I feel like I never really mourned that pregnancy much because my whole focus was on our bunny rabbit Hoover and all that. And actually my bleed took a lot longer to properly come because I was just grief stricken, really. I wasn't eating properly. I was in a really bad way, as was Muriel. That was a real all-time low for us. I didn't even really allow myself to feel much at that point. So after that, we were like, right, this is 3 miscarriages now. This is recurrent miscarriage. The clinic says that this is recurrent miscarriage, which makes you eligible after God knows how many thousands and thousands of pounds we spent to get some tests done. But turns out because we're not trying naturally, we still have to pay for our tests. So we went privately to get what they call the sticky blood test done to see if, right, do I have a blood clotting problem? Is there something going on that's problematic when this embryo or starts to grow and get towards fetus? Something's going wrong. Is the baby not getting enough blood? What's wrong with me? So I go and do this test, and it's annoying because I have to wait. I think it was like 4-6 weeks after treatment. And then once you do the blood test, the results take 4 or 5 weeks to come back because they have to leave the blood for a long time in order to test it properly. So the whole process from the miscarriage happening to having the test to being able to go back into treatment was between January to April. So there was this kind of 3-month gap where we didn't really have a break because we were still in it and we were still waiting for these results. And I was turning at this point everything, and I mean everything, inside out. You name it, I researched it. That's all I did was research, talk to people, go on forums, look at videos, find out. Anyone who's been in this situation, what can I do? So we finally moved to 4th transfer, and the clinic advised at this stage, you should transfer the final 2 together because they're both low grade, C grade embryos. They're not the best quality embryos. So we would advise at this stage, considering your history, a double transfer. From the research I had done, it seemed to be that progesterone makes all the difference. And I had my progesterone levels tested in the previous transfer, but this was after I started losing the pregnancy. And I wanted to know, well, hang on, what are my progesterone levels at the time of transfer when this implantation window is happening and the embryo is just starting, if I'm lucky enough for it to implant, for it to develop? And I said to them, I want my progesterone levels checked at transfer because you start taking the progesterone, I think it was a few days before you have your transfer. And they said they really wouldn't advise it, and that if I absolutely have to have it, they would advise it, I think 2 days after the transfer, they can check it. Anyway, I said, I want the test. So we went forward to transfer. It was very stressful going because we hope the embryos thaw okay. They had in the past, but you never know what's going to happen. And it was all quite funny, actually. The embryologist was very entertaining, and Muriel decided that she couldn't remember her own name on the day when asked for it because we were so stressed. But the embryologist said, you're fine, both embryos have thawed. And that was that. I think of all the transfers, we were in a weird way the most chilled because we were like, we've been through a lot now. You start to care less. In a way, you're caring more than ever. And in a way, you're caring less because you're like, I'm starting to give very minimal fucks here because I am at the point, you've taken everything you can from me. You've even taken our pet, which was all we had left. We're kind of done here. What more do you want? And I remember, again, I had the sedation because they always did. And I remember, I think they just started the sedation. So it was like a matter of seconds before I passed out. And they said, Anna, look at the screen, look at the screen. And I looked at the screen and I could see the 2 embryos. And one was obviously there under a massive microscope. One was big and one was so tiny. And I was like, wow, one's much smaller than the other, because one was a day 5 and one was a day 6. And I just saw them, and then I just closed my eyes and thought, just imagine you're giving Hoover a big hug. And that was it. I did wake up, funny enough, during the transfer, because I think I'd started to become immune to the amount of sedation I'd had. So they had to knock me out again. So when I came round, I was the most knocked out I've ever been. They gave me a glass of water and I just went, ugh, and I just spilled it all down me. I had blood on me. I was bleeding from where they'd given me the sedation. It was all just a bit of a comedy act. There's some very, very funny photos of me. Maybe I can put them up here. Looking completely like, what the hell's going on? And apparently I think I'd said a lot of funny things after waking up from transfers and egg collections. One time I'd said, I'm going to Asda and I've seen a packet of crisps or something. Oh, another time I was singing. Yes, Muriel said I woke up and I was saying, I need to sing. But yeah, really funny. But yeah, felt fine after that. But we had done a few tricks. We'd made a few decisions which we were criticised for, which was quite interesting, because I decided, look, they're telling us to start the progesterone on the Thursday, whatever it was. Let's start it on the Wednesday. Let's start it a day early, because I'd read all this stuff about implantation windows. I said, let's do it. I did write this on a forum at the time, and I got a lot of criticism for it. They said you should never go against what your clinic is advising you to do, which I get. But I do feel that in the end, you have to be your own advocate, and I'm not encouraging anyone to meddle with their treatment, but that was just what felt right for us at the time. So we started that progesterone a day early so that I had an even bigger progesterone boost. And then I went for this test 2 days after the transfer. So I'm taking at this point 2 pessaries a day of progesterone and a Lubion injection in the morning and in the evening, which we started a day earlier than we should have. So I should be pumped, right, on my progesterone. And this is a test they advised me not to have. So I go in on the Friday to have this test, and that's that. Feeling okay, right. We get a call from the clinic Saturday morning, and I think, oh, something's not right. And they phone up and they say, yeah, your progesterone levels, they're too low. They're not where they should be, considering everything you're taking. And it was like a light bulb moment at that time. because I thought, like, has this always been the problem? If I'd been taking this higher dose of progesterone from the start, if this had been rectified from the start, maybe I wouldn't have lost that first one. I don't think I should have lost that second one. I think that was a progesterone issue. The third one, who knows? Maybe that was just an abnormal embryo, but they said to me, you need to increase your dosage, you need to do an extra injection a day. So I think at this point I'm doing 3 Lubion injections a day, and Lubion was the worst injection of them all, bar blood thinners that I was unnecessarily on at one point. It was the worst injection of them all. It was just bonkers. And I can't remember if I said before, sorry, of the blood tests that I had done, nothing was found. So there was no blood clotting issue. If anything, my blood was too thin. So there were no issues found from that blood test, which was good. So my progesterone is upped massively, and it's only 4 days past the transfer. And we start to get a bit stressed, because I got a lot of messages at the time from this forum I was on saying, you should never have started that progesterone early. You've now meddled with your implantation window. The clinic know what's best. You've now ruined your chance of a pregnancy. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, maybe I shouldn't have done this, very worried. Muriel goes out for a couple of hours to her allotment that morning, and I'm meant to be doing some songwriting, and I'm sat here thinking, oh my gosh, have I buggered this? Because I'm the one that pushed to change the protocol and meddle with it. And I just panic, and I go for the pregnancy test. Which is like 4 days past transfer, mega early. Like, I knew that I probably wasn't going to see anything. It was just going to be negative, because not enough time's passed for their HCG levels to go up, blah, blah, blah. So technically, I'm like 4.5 weeks pregnant, but I didn't know if I was pregnant. So I pull out these bloody tests. I can still see it now, and there's 2 types. There's the first response that are like very responsive, and the strict tests, which are a little bit more unresponsive. And I am talking to myself. I can see myself doing this test. I'm talking to myself saying, you're an idiot. Why are you testing at 4 days past transfer? This is the most stupid thing. Anyway, I do the test, and I'm like, I can see a line. There's a line. It's the faintest line, you can like squint to see it. I'm holding it up in the light. There's a line. I can see a line. And I do the other test, which is the harder test. And you'd look at it from afar and you'd be like, there's no line. But if you really squint, if you look, I'm like, I think there's a line. I think this has worked. I think I'm pregnant. And Muriel comes back from the allotment. I'm like, I've done something a bit stupid. So I tell her, and anyway, from there, I'm like, hang on a minute, like, let's not get carried away. We've been pregnant every time. I'm going to lose this pregnancy maybe, but I think what we need to do is now test every day. Let's see if the line gets stronger. And if it does get stronger and I lose it again, at least we'll know the point at which this pregnancy is being lost. So it's kind of like a scientific experiment, right? I'm just gonna analyze this. Man, oh man, Jesus, we are testing day and night every day. And this line, I think I've got a picture of it somewhere, I'll put it up. It just gets stronger and stronger. We've never had such strong lines this early before. Like, what is going on? And I'm like, is it because it's 2 embryos? Is this twins? What's going on? And we get to test day, we tell the clinic, they book us in for our scan in a few weeks. We're like, we are rolling. And then I'm like, poof, week 6, sick as anything. Which is reassuring because I'm like, okay, but I've been sick before and I lost it. But this was sickness like I can't even explain, off the scale, like nausea all day, all night. It was blooming horrific. But we're happy. We get to our 7-week scan. We are absolutely terrified. We've never got to scan day before. What the hell's going to happen? Again, I'm a massive I'm like the Michelin man of progesterone. I am like a progesterone bubble. I'm injecting here, there, everywhere. It's a lot. And we go and we say, we just one. Just please give us one. Please give us one. And as soon as they start this test, Miriam and I like holding hands, as soon as they put in the, what's it called? Intravaginal scanner, whatever the hell it is. Lovely. You don't need a medical, any medical qualifications to see, we're like, there's something there. And straight away, the embryologist said, there's one. And we were just like, the relief was like, we just couldn't believe it. We just couldn't believe it. And then within about 3 seconds, she starts moving this wand around. She said, there's 2. There's 2? There's 2? What do you mean there's 2? Twins? We have twins? Like, we've been through all this and now we have 2? We couldn't believe it. And then she starts looking around saying, I need to check if there's a third because one of the embryos might have split. So at this point, we're a bit like, okay, like, let's not take it too far here. So she finishes all the checks and she's like, 2 healthy embryos, 2 heartbeats. We get all our pictures. We're sat in the waiting room in disbelief. We get discharged. I'm getting discharged from this clinic after such a long time. After so many hurdles, we get discharged to the NHS. I'm like, what? We don't have to pay anymore. The NHS are going to look after us. We have twins. What the fuck is going on? So we're so excited. We tell our family. We don't tell like our wider network, but we tell just our immediate family. There's video calls, there's disbelief. I still can't believe to this day that we were pregnant with twins. Like, wow, how cool was that? So yeah, I was really sick, chronically sick, finding it very, very difficult to function in my daily life. And we were around just hitting the 8-week point, which I believe is when the embryos go up to fetus. And I had some very, very, very light brown spotting. And we're like, okay. It was nothing too bad. It kind of came for a bit, went for a bit, came for a bit, went for a bit, which I know can happen in a pregnancy. But we thought, right, we're a bit on edge here. Weirdly enough, I was meant to have my COVID vaccination at that time, which I decided to decline at the time. Thank God I didn't, because I would have blamed everything that had happened on the jab. Anyway, on 8 weeks, 3 days, we get up, I think it's a Monday morning, we're getting up for work. We're working from home, but we're in a rush to get to our computers. And I go to the toilet and I look down and I think, okay, this is now blood. And I shout for Muriel, who's downstairs. She comes rushing up and I was like, not to be too graphic, but I show her, I'm like, this is blood. And I'm stood there. And I think for me, this was the worst point for me individually and my kind of war with myself. I'm standing up. And at this point, again, not to be too graphic, I don't have anything on down here. I just got out of the shower or something. I don't know. I'm showing Mira the blood. And I was like, what's wrong? What do we do? What do we do? And as I'm saying this blood just starts to pour down my leg, is the only way I can say it. And I'm sorry to be graphic, but it just pours down my leg. And I can see Muriel stood there looking at me, and the tears running down my face. And I just looked at her and I said, what the fuck is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? This was meant to work. Why can't I do this? What's wrong with my body? And it was just awful. And, you know, at this point, we know I'm pregnant, or I was pregnant with twins. We know that this was supposedly my state. So we're like, let's go to the hospital. And we go to the hospital. I say, look, I'm 8 weeks pregnant with twins. I'm bleeding. And they say, okay, take a seat. Your partner can't stay with you because of COVID rules. Right. So I'm sat there on my own for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. Someone comes to see me. They ask me to do a urine test. And then I wait again. And then I wait again. And they say, right, come back tomorrow and we'll scan you. I said, tomorrow? I can't wait till tomorrow. I need to know. I can't. I've lost pregnancies before that. I need to know what's going on. Well, we know because you're IVF and you've already had your viability scan, we know that it's not an ectopic pregnancy. So you are not in danger and we don't have the time to scan you today. And I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe they wouldn't scan me. I couldn't believe that they just expected me to skip on home and wait for the rest of the day and the night and the next day. That wasn't going to happen. I had a massive go at them, I'm not going to lie. And I obviously I don't wish to have a go at frontline workers, but in a way I felt that was discrimination. And if I hadn't been IVF, they would have probably scanned me. So that was that. And then after that, we are desperately searching everywhere to get a private scan. All the places close to us that day are fully booked. Everywhere's pretty fully booked. And we managed in the end, after a lot of searching, to find this place that's about a 45-minute drive away. And they said, like, it said, we don't have availability, but if it's an emergency, call this number. We call the number and they were just bloody brilliant. They said, come in at 5 o'clock. We can see you. We'll get someone down there and we'll scan you. And at this stage, again, I am feeling sick as any. I said to me, I don't know what's going on. I still feel so sick, but I'm bleeding. And eventually we get to this place to be scanned and you're just like, okay, like, let's just do it. And at this point, it's the first time I have the thing on my stomach, the scanner on my stomach, because I'm further along, and she starts the scan and straight away we see Elise. And again, we can see very clearly this is definitely a living fetus. It's a heartbeat. It's bigger than what we saw before. She's there. We didn't know it was her at the time, but one's there. One's alive. How is one alive? How have we still got something? I think we knew that the other one, something can't have been right. She could still see the other one on the scanner, but she couldn't see clearly enough what was going on. So she said, can I do a intravaginal scan again to really get to see? I can't quite see if there's a heartbeat or not. It doesn't look like there is, but I need to do a more thorough check. So she does this scan and she says, I'm very sorry, there's no heartbeat. It was weird. I think at the time, you know, we were just so relieved to have one still there. Again, probably didn't take enough time to mourn the second. It was just, we couldn't believe that there was still one there. The twin showed up on the scan. We went for a scan at 10 weeks and then obviously we had our 12-week scan and our 20-week scan, and it took until, and we had a 16-week scan as well. The twin was still there at 10 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks. By 20 weeks, it had just gone. We just saw an empty sac. So I think it's called vanishing twin syndrome. It gets reabsorbed by apparently you and the remaining fetus, which is interesting. Maybe that's why Elise is so big. She was big baby, 10 pound 6. But yeah, it was hard, you know, kind of cast a bit of a shadow on what should have been a happy time, you know, when we went for those scans, to be reassured to still see, okay, the twin's there. And we made sure we always are, you know, we got the pictures and we wanted to take it, and I still have the pictures of the twin up until 16 weeks. And I do feel very sad to this day. Occasionally I look and think there should have been 2 of you. And in terms of the miscarriage, I often think, did this work because of increased progesterone? Did this work because I had a folic acid deficiency, which is something I should have mentioned. One thing that blood test did pick up was that I'm a carrier of MTHFR gene mutation, which isn't uncommon. A lot of the population have it, but it is associated with recurrent miscarriage. And it meant that I couldn't absorb folic acid. So all this folic acid I'd been taking for a couple of years essentially wasn't doing anything. I had to be on a very high dose of it. Did that contribute? Or was it a case in the end that they put in these 2 and my body did what it always did and decided, nah, I'm not gonna roll with this pregnancy, but it didn't realise there was another one there and Elise just tricked it? I don't know. I think the progesterone made a big difference. And if you're going through anything similar to what we went through, have a look into that. I think more and more research is coming out now saying progesterone, please prescribe all progesterone. It's the defining factor in stopping pregnancies from being lost. Now we have our daughter Elise. We wanted to call her, I mean, you love or hate it, we wanted to call her Axel. We always thought we were going to have a boy called Axel, and then when we found out we're having a girl, we thought Axel. And I think had the twin been with us, it would either be Axel or Axel. So Elise's middle name is Axel, so she always has her twin next to her. She'll always carry her twin with her through life. But, you know, it's just the three of us, and I think that's just how it was only ever meant to be. I don't think we'd have coped with another one. Bloody hard work, really, really hard work. Respect to anyone raising twins or triplets, multiples, you know, just you are amazing. It wasn't meant to be for us. I'm privileged that we got to have the opportunity to be parents of twins for a very short time, but I'm even more privileged that we get to be parents to our daughter Elise. Elise is now 21 months, so 2 years is on the horizon, which is bonkers. I think in terms of my recurrent miscarriage journey, the reason I wanted to talk through this and just have it on record is A, hopefully to make sure people feel they're not alone if you're going through it. B, to inform and to maybe help someone medically on their path. Maybe there's something I've said that you haven't thought of. And C, just to kind of reflect. It's kind of, I suppose, like therapy for myself. And I would say that the defining moment of all of it for me was me being stood in that bathroom with the blood trickling down my legs at 8 weeks, nearly 8.5 weeks pregnant, thinking, what? And I remember saying, what the F is wrong with me? And this, you know, internal hatred and war with my body. It's like everyone I know, everyone can just get pregnant and have a pregnancy and pop out a baby. Why can't I do this? You're told from the youngest age that you can have a baby one day, you'll be a mummy, you'll be pregnant, you'll be this. And I think being gay, and Muriel and I realised this a lot in our parenting, we did at the time, spend a lot of your young adulthood thinking, I'm not going to have a child, a family isn't going to be a thing for me. The period we were brought up in, IVF wasn't really a massive thing. So we spent a lot of our lives thinking we'd never be parents. And then to actually have the opportunity to go through it and still get told by the universe, nah, this isn't going to work for you. It was just like a lot mentally. And something that I know affects a lot of people on their fertility journey is when your friends, family, whoever are falling pregnant around you and it's not working for you. Actually, every time we had a transfer and I went on to lose the pregnancy, someone we knew and often close friends fell pregnant. And that was really hard to keep losing the pregnancies. It was just weird. It was like at every single transfer, another friend, somebody fell pregnant, told me they were pregnant. And in a way it was hard because their children, some, not so much now, but you know, at the time, I think that should be my child now. My child should be that age now. That should have been us now. We should have the oldest child of all my friends, but we have one of the youngest, even though we started our journey much earlier than they did. And that is brutal. Different people have different opinions on this. For me, in the end, I don't know what would have happened if we hadn't had Elise. I don't know how I would have dealt with it. But in the end, I was just like, I need space. I don't need to be around pregnant people. I don't need to be going to baby showers. I don't need to be doing any of this. And I didn't. And I think most of the people I knew were pretty good. Some handled it better than others. Some of my friends were brilliant in how they told me they were pregnant and they were very mindful. And I eternally am thankful for that. Others weren't, not because they were nasty or horrible people, because they were just ignorant. I had, one friend send me their positive pregnancy test a week after I'd miscarried, and they knew I'd miscarried. So I don't know why they felt the need to send me that. I had another friend writing to me when they were pregnant saying, oh, I'm only 5 weeks pregnant. And I thought, why are you telling me when you know I've just miscarried? And they said, I don't want what happened to you to happen to me. As if I can give them some assurity that it's not going to happen to them. So I had some real stupidity along the way from ignorance. But wow, you grow so much and you learn so much through this journey. So you have to do what's right for you. If being around babies and children helps you, good for you. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. But for the people who've been critical of me at the time, staying away from that scene, I don't particularly care. That's what helped me. And I think if we hadn't had Elise and it hadn't worked out for us, we would have just found a way to deal with a different path. And we were very much looking back at adoption at the time. We revisited our adoption agency just before we had Elise, the transfer with Elise. We were back on that. And I think that would have been, we might have had one more go at IVF with a different donor to see if there was any different result. And then after that, it was adoption. And we know that if we go on to have more children, it will be adoption. But at the moment, we don't plan to have any more. We're really happy just as our girl gang of 3. Sometimes I worry about Elise being an only child. I think as all parents do, but there are a lot of benefits to it as well. Depends how you want to look at it. She does have donor siblings dotted around the world, 2 of which she is connected with. But, you know, technically she is an only child. I'm already still recovering from IVF, and this is, 2-3 years down the line. It takes a long time for all those drugs to get flushed out of your system, particularly if you're lucky enough to get pregnant. You get swept up then in that pregnancy, following on from all those drugs. And I took a lot of drugs. I would say it's taken until very recently for me to feel back to how I felt before all of this. I had a very difficult pregnancy. I wasn't monitored properly. I should have had a planned C-section and I didn't. I had induction, 36-hour labour, attempted forceps delivery, an episiotomy, and then an emergency C-section to a 10-pound-6 baby. I was just absolutely in pieces. And I think my body's given everything it can to get to this point. And, I would do it again if I wanted to, but I really don't want to do that again. I have a lot more better things I can be doing with myself, with my soul, with my time and with my money, all of which is going to benefit Elise. And further to that, I wouldn't want to sacrifice this time I'm now having with my daughter to get swept up in another recurrent miscarriage journey. Who knows, we could do it again, and thanks to all we know now, maybe it could work. But, I'm a couple of years older now. My egg reserve was never that great. My AMH level wasn't that great for my age. Do I really want to sacrifice the fun and the happiness I'm having now to get swept up in all that again and bring that misery back into our house? No. One thing I am passionate about is talking about it. And again, this is something that works for me but doesn't work for everyone. Other people who I've met that have gone through a similar journey and certainly worse journey than we had, many of them, choose to say nothing because it's their pain to hold. And if for them that's the right thing to do is to just keep it to themselves and not share that journey, then absolutely that's what you've got to do. For me, I guess we're unavoidably, we have to say, yeah, we did IVF. We're a same-sex couple. We can't hide that. So people know there was intervention. But I've always been really open about what's happened. So I know this has been a long video, but I just wanted to talk through the process because it's funny how time goes on and you forget stuff. Obviously, I'll never forget what we endured, but you forget, what was the tweak in our treatment? When did that happen? When did this happen? I think you can see, even from what I've said, that I've tried to slot things in later down the line. But I just wanted to get it all out and say, I went through it. I miscarried. Every time other than that last time. I still miscarried. That's funny, when I look at my pregnancy with Elise, there was still a miscarriage in it. I got really lucky at the end, and I'm talking, that paper thin luck. We were so close to not having Elise. She was the bottom of the batch, the bottom graded, nearly didn't make the freezer embryo. So whatever you have, whatever grade your embryo is, it doesn't mean it's chromosomally normal, doesn't mean shit. I don't know why they even grade these flipping embryos. So ignore the grading. Research, turn everything inside out. Don't always trust your clinic. Of course, they're the experts and of course they know what's best. Do your own research, test them. I pushed for that progesterone test that they told me wasn't necessary. And then they freaked out when they saw the result and said, you need to increase that dose. If I hadn't increased that dose, my daughter might not be here. And that was from me. I was my own advocate. And do whatever is right for you. Whatever makes your journey easier, you have to be selfish. Do it. If you have any questions, please do get in touch. We're on Instagram and we've got an email, so I'll put all that below. And I wish you the very best of luck on your journey if you're going through this.